Welcome to another Biz interview exclusive. I'm Cindy Peters, editor of the CSI and Sustainability platform on Bizcommunity. Today, we're talking to Sherie de Wet, CEO and founder of Palesa Pads. Thank you so much, Sherie, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sure. So let's start with your journey as a social entrepreneur. You have a very diverse CV in terms of starting out in 2014, I think, as a school teacher, or was it 2004?
2004. I'm a bit older than I look, yeah.
A maths teacher, and then you had various roles from investment accountant to sales and marketing to you name it. So how did you end up where you are today in terms of running a social enterprise and Palesa Pads as it is today?
Well, funny you say that. Everybody always told me to run my own business. And I said, I'm not going to do that until I find something that I'm really passionate about. And I had no idea it would be pads, really, truly. If I had a million guesses, I wouldn't have guessed sanitary pads. But actually what happened was, in my previous job, I traveled a lot into Africa. I was working with government departments and I traveled into West Africa and extremely poor places. And I stayed in these places quite a while. And I started seeing poverty really firsthand, and I started becoming more and more aware of how poor people are and how disadvantaged people are, and the sanitary indignity that they face, just in terms of toilets, lack of toilets. I actually saw somebody relieve themselves on a railway line. That was really a turning point for me. And while I was doing all this research, trying to find out what I can do to assist, that was actually how I found out that there were girls who didn't even have sanitary pads, couldn't afford them, and they just weren't going to school because they were using newspaper and cow dung and chicken feathers and the most horrendous things because they didn't have pads. And eventually they missed so much school that they just dropped out altogether, ended up marrying young, falling pregnant very early, and the cycle of poverty just continues. And I'm such a feminist. If I'd known about this years ago, I would have done something years ago. I was actually shocked. I cried, to be honest with you. I cried when I read this. I was so shocked that women are going through this in this day and age, And I looked at all the options available, and I thought, well, disposable pads don't make sense because then you're going to have to just keep donating to them continuously, and you can't do that. You can't always do that. And that was then how I found out about cloth pads, and I thought, well, that's a clever idea. I remember my granny saying something about cloth pads in the 1950s. But I didn't really pay much attention. So I started looking into it again, and that was how I started Palesa Pads, because to me it was a good, sustainable solution. I was going to sell products that were already available, but I wasn't happy with the quality of them. And I'm a big believer in, if it's not good enough for you, it's not good enough for me either. And I would never wear them. So I decided to make my own. Fortunately, I know how to sew. So I've been sewing since I was a little girl. So I used my sewing machine that I got for my 16th birthday, no less. And just started sewing and trying out different fabrics and different ideas and testing them myself for a few months until I really got it right, until I was satisfied that I had a product that was comfortable, good quality, easy to use, easy to wash, doesn't smell, doesn't stain. Really that's something that I would be comfortable to use and proud to use. And that's how Palesa Pads was born.
Okay, so you're in the direct selling market, but a large or the majority of your business comes from corporate sponsorship in terms of assisting girls from underprivileged communities access menstrual health sanitary wear. So was this always part of your business model? Was that always your intention?
So interesting that you asked that question. Honestly speaking, because I'd never been involved in any sort of charity work before, I didn't know how I was going to get a sponsorship. My experience of charity is those guys who stand outside the supermarket shaking a coin, a tin, waiting for coins. And I thought, well, I'm not going to do that. And I just didn't have any experience. So my actual original business plan was to sell to women directly and then use my profits to sponsor the girls. But that just took a little bit longer than I expected. And very quickly after I developed the product, people were contacting me for their back to school or these Keep a Girl Child in School programs. And my mom invited me to one that a lady at her church was doing with disposable pads. And I went to the school and I showed the girls the pads and they were so excited about it. And I made a promise to them right then and there that I would come back and sponsor them with pads. And then I had to keep that promise. And it really was difficult. Wow, raising funds. All the people I thought would help me didn't want to help me. The people that I thought would never be interested just gave me money, like, without hesitation. So it was an interesting journey. And it's difficult to not get upset with your friends and family sometimes if they don't, support you straight away, because you expect they will, but they don't see your vision yet. They do now, but they didn't initially. So, I mean, the first 30 girls that I raised funds for was 13,000 Rand. And I tell you, it nearly killed me. I think I nearly gave up at that point. But it was such a success. The girls had such a great time and everything was amazing. The sponsor was so impressed. Everything was great that I decided to just keep going on that front. And in doing that, I actually found, I discovered when I started focusing on that these companies did have huge budgets actually for this kind of work. And many of them were already spending it on disposable pads. So it wasn't as though I was begging anybody for money. I was just helping them redirect their funds to a more sustainable solution. So that ended up becoming the focus. For the last 3 years, in fact, that has been the focus. But we are now trying to, get the product back again into the direct selling market, into the retail shop, so that even the moms and sisters of the girls who receive pads for free can still go and buy themselves some. Because that comes up at every school, The girl receives pads and she's excited, but she knows that her mom doesn't have, her sister doesn't have, her auntie doesn't have. And she would like to buy some, and then it's not available. So that's what I'm working on at the moment, is to actually get it into the retail stores. I've got some fantastic support on that front, and we're making good progress. So yeah.
Awesome. So do you have some statistics to share with us in terms of how big the issue is in South Africa in terms of access in underprivileged communities? How big of an issue is it for us?
So it's actually, I'm glad you asked that. The menstrual health community in South Africa is really very active, so passionate. And I'm a part of many of these committees. And just this week, I attended the South African Coalition for Menstrual Health Management. And it was a fantastic web conference with different speakers who had information on this. And one of them had actually just got some updated statistics on this, which I'd like to share with you. Okay. So previously, there were claims that there were sort of 10 million girls missing school because of a lack of sanitary pads, which Africa Check dismissed as being inflated, which I think is right, because there are only about 10 million girls in South Africa. So it's unlikely that all of them can't afford sanitary pads. So Africa Check in 2016 did some research and said that if we assume that girls in quintile 1 and 2 schools who are not paying school fees and therefore cannot afford school fees, we can assume that they cannot afford sanitary pads either. And that number brought us down to 2.6 million girls. But I mean, that's still
a huge number.
It's a population of a small country. So, but now some more research has been done on this. So let me give you some feedback. In fact, I'll send this to you afterwards. I'll tell you the details. So what they've found is that in terms of senior primary girls, this is where the biggest problem seems to be. So grade 6, 7, and 8, really. 50% of them have actually missed school due to menstruation. Now, obviously, this is a sample size based on extremely disadvantaged schools to begin with, right? It's not every girl in the whole country. But of the sample that they found, 50% of them were missing school due to their menstruation. They were missing between about 5.3 days per month. I mean, it's now obviously an average, so it's about 5 days. And they even missed, and 46% of them missed school in the last term. If a person moves up to senior and secondary school, grade 9 to 12, we see that 26.1 girls have missed school due to their menstruation, and on average they missed 2 days. And in further education students, so that would be tertiary education, 37.8 of them have actually, 37.8 of them missed school while they were at school during high school. And now that they're in university, presumably now that they have casual jobs, 17.5% of them are missing university or tertiary education due to their menstruation. And the average being 2 days. So you can see the problem is quite severe. So of those who can't afford it, many of them are just missing school, missing university, missing. And I spoke to the girls when I went to a school in Witbank. I said to them, how many of you miss school? And they said, only a few of us. The rest of us just make a plan and we come anyway.
Sure.
So they're coming to school with a sock in their panty or newspaper, or so many of them wear blankets around them just in case they spoil themselves or soil themselves, so that they've got some sort of protection for that. But it's terrible. And interestingly, what came up as well was how many girls have cited pain as the reason for actually staying away. Sanitary pads was one of the biggest issues. So was a lack of appropriate sanitation facilities at the school. Toilets. Many of these schools don't have toilets that flush, or toilets that don't have doors, or they don't have dustbins. That's another challenge with the disposable pads, is where do they throw them?
Yeah.
And many of them throw them in the pit toilet, and that's a problem because it doesn't break down like biological matter. So you have to redig the pit toilet much sooner than you would if it was just organic matter, let me say that rather. So pain has been an issue, which I think could be attributed to a few things. Obviously, we all have period pains, but that's something to look into. So there's a couple of reasons. It's not just a lack of sanitary pads that the girls are missing school, and toilets has been a big problem, a big problem. There's no water to wash their hands, all those kinds of challenges. So those are the statistics that have come back now out of the most recent research in terms of how big the problem actually is. And I myself was quite surprised to see that primary school girls were battling so much. And that's perhaps because they can't get casual work. We know of girls who actually will have sex with blessers just for a pack of pads, which is shocking. And I suppose the primary school girls are probably not in that position, so perhaps more of the high school girls are. But either way, it's terrible that this is happening. Yeah. Horrific, that's the right word. Horrific that this is happening.
Yeah. So what kind of impact is Palesa Pads having in terms of the number of schools you've helped, or the number of girls that you've assisted? What kind of impact are you seeing on the ground in terms of your work?
Well, the thank you letters that we get are just phenomenal. I actually can't keep up. I've got hundreds, and they're beautiful. They thank you so much. These pads are so comfortable. I used to be afraid of my period. I used to hate having my period. Now with Palesa Pads, I don't even have pains anymore. I'm so comfortable. I just love it. I can go to school. I feel confident. I can even play at break time when I used to just sit and watch the kids. Now I can play because I'm not worried about leaking. So those are the kinds of messages that are coming back from the girls. The teachers actually have, this I found so interesting as well. The teachers have told me that their bathrooms are so clean now that the kids are not using disposable pads anymore, because they're not flushing them on the toilet, they're not leaving them in the corner, so their bathrooms have never been so clean. So that's another benefit to it. The beauty of the Palesa Pads, of course, is that it's reusable for up to 5 years. So once these girls have received their pads, they don't have to worry again. They don't have to ever sleep with somebody for pads again, or do something to compromise their health during their menstruation. They can rather just use the Palesa Pad. So that's been a big blessing. In fact, in lockdown, one of the moms contacted me. I've had a lot of moms contact me just saying that my girls are so happy. They just love these pads. Thank you. You've saved me so much money. I really appreciate it. And one of the moms had contacted me. Her daughter received pads last year, but I think she hadn't started her period yet. She was in grade 6 or something. And now in the lockdown, she started her period and they didn't have money. And she remembered that she got Palesa Pads at her school last year, and she tried them and she loved them. So her mom sent me a message on Facebook to say, wow, I can't believe it took us so long to try these Palesa Pads. They're so fantastic. So, that's the thing. It's the comfort. Because the other thing with cloth pads versus disposable pads, and this is not just Palesa Pads, any cloth pads really, is that they don't have chemicals in them. Disposable pads are often made with recycled material, and they add all sorts of chemicals like dioxin and bleach and chlorine to sanitize these recycled materials and keep the pad sanitary. But those chemicals actually causing a lot of problems for women's health. They cause increased cramps, believe it or not, irritation, skin irritations and itchiness. And it's also the reason for the smell of menstruation. I mean, a lot of people don't know that because most people, like myself, before I started Palesa Pads, have only ever used disposable pads. We assume that smell of menstruation is from us. But what I discovered is that it's not from us at all. Blood doesn't smell because it's not dirty blood. It's only 28 days old. It's actually the chemical reaction between your blood and those chemicals that causes the smell. So the minute you don't have chemicals, you don't have a smell. So that makes a big difference as well, because for girls sitting in class, sitting next to a boy at a desk, if he can smell that she's on her period, and it's not imaginary, it's a real smell, then she feels awkward, she feels uncomfortable, the kids tease her. Now with her Palesa pads, there's no smell anymore. So nobody even knows that she's on her period. So there's so many benefits to this, Our pads can also be worn for much longer than disposable pads. They can be worn for up to 12 hours. So if there wasn't a place to change, you could wear it for longer, but you can honestly change it under a bush. You wouldn't even need to be in a toilet to change the pad because of the way that they're made. You'd be so quick to tidy it up. So those are all the impact that we've been seeing, and how women have just appreciated not having these smells anymore, not having cramps, not having all these irritations. So it's been an amazing journey, and the feedback's just been incredible. I honestly, I can't keep up. I've got a whole folder on my phone just with thank you messages from the girls, hundreds. This is wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
Sweet. And then the other benefit is...
Sorry, can I interrupt you? You asked me a question about numbers and I didn't answer you.
Okay.
So just to answer you on that, I'm finalizing the numbers, but it's from what I saw last night when I calculated, it's just over 40,000 girls that we've helped so far in 3 years, and it's more than 350,000 pads. I'm just trying to get the actual numbers, but that's the minimum. So it's at least 350,000 pads distributed to more than 40,000 girls.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
You must be so proud.
So proud, you have no idea.
And then there's also the environmental benefit of a reusable pad as well, on top of the health benefits and the cost benefit.
Absolutely. So, as I said before, with the disposable pads, in fact, this is something that came up in our menstrual health symposium. One of the organizations that's doing amazing work delivering these disposable pads all over the country. Someone asked them, do you go and collect the pads again? Or do you provide them with bins? What do you do for them to dispose of the pads? And she honestly answered and said, we don't have a solution for that. So they do just throw them wherever they can, and they throw them in the pit toilet, as I said, which fills up the pit toilet much faster than it should be. And sometimes the communities don't have money to build a new one, because a pit toilet shouldn't really fill up. It should dispose and continue, but because it's plastic and not biodegradable, it fills up. Also, they often end up in community rubbish dumps, especially in the rural areas. There isn't a municipal refuse collection service. So even if you put it in a rubbish bag, there's no one to come and fetch it again. So ultimately, those communities have their own rubbish dumps where they burn a lot of the rubbish, and these pads will sit there for months until they get burned. They bring vermin to the community and insects and things because of the blood. In fact, I know many girls and women who actually wash their disposable pads before throwing them away because they don't want their blood being so freely available in the environment. So, I mean, disposable pads take hundreds of years to break down, but you only wear them for a few hours. And in fact, in a 5-year span, a woman would use about 700 pads or tampons in 5 years, one woman. And where a pack of Palesa pads would replace all of that. So one pack of Palesa pads would replace 700 disposable pads. So it's a huge impact on the environment, not blocking drains. I mean, so many schools and places have spent a fortune removing sanitary pads from toilets. So all of that disappears as soon as you have a washable pad, because the girl takes her pad home and washes it when she gets home. No mess, no fuss.
Amazing.
And by the way, can I just mention this thing, because I had a question the other day. Somebody said, but if you're throwing that menstrual blood out into the garden, are you sure it's not going to damage the environment? I mean, for heaven's sake. So the honest answer is absolutely not. I mean, you should be throwing it into the toilet anyway, just for hygiene purposes. But if you were very rural and you threw it out in your backyard, it can do no harm. It's the original fertilizer. It's actually so full of nutrients. There are people who've watered their plants and their vegetables with menstrual blood. So it is because of all the nutrients. Yeah, there's a whole movement at the moment about people doing that, emptying menstrual cups into pot plants. I'm not there yet, but so it's actually. No, you really should. I can send you some articles. Very interesting to see what people are saying about that. But yes, so even if you did throw the water out into the garden, you would be doing no harm to the environment at all.
Okay, final question. So you're looking to, as part of your vision for Palesa Pads, is you're looking to be the leader in the cloth pad revolution in Africa. So what are your expansion plans like for moving out into the rest of Africa?
So, there's such a great need, and I get called every single day for people wanting to set up their own branches of Palesa Pads. So I'm working on that. I'm working on setting up distribution facilities. I've got distributors in some of the other countries, but we haven't formalized the training and everything the way I would have liked to. They've had training, but it's not the way I would have liked to. So what I'm busy with at the moment is actually formalizing all of our training documents and policies and manuals and things, so that the whole system becomes replicatable and scalable. So that would be the plan, is to get distributors and trainers out into all those countries. And once there is sufficient demand to justify setting up a factory, it would be great to set up a factory in those countries. But a person's got to have enough demand to make sure that the people that you employ stay employed. So in the meantime, it's just distribution for now, but my vision is huge. In my vision, I see little Palesa Pads factories all over Africa in my dreams.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Sherie, for your time today. We wish you the best of luck with your business and all the amazing work that you're doing. It sounds so amazing, and congratulations. And thank you so much for your time once again.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to be on the show. Thank you for a lovely interview.
Sure. Find more Biz interview exclusives on Bizcommunity.com or check out our YouTube channel.